The smell of lemon polish filled the big glass-walled conference room as Lucia Vega moved her cleaning cloth in slow circles over the long, shiny mahogany table. Her uniform was plain, her shoes worn, but her movements were careful, almost graceful. She had learned long ago that blending into the background kept her safe. No one noticed the cleaning lady, and that was exactly how she wanted it. Or at least, that's what she told herself. But today, something unusual was happening. The double glass doors opened with a click, and in strode Victor Reeves, the billionaire owner of Reeves Enterprises. His suit was so perfectly pressed it looked like it had been ironed directly onto him. The faint smell of expensive cologne floated into the room, mixed with the scent of polished wood. In his hand was a thick document with a red stamp across the top and lines of intricate characters written down each page. It was Mandarin. Lucia's heart gave a sharp jolt in her chest. She recognized the language instantly. The strokes, the flow, the way the ink formed characters she had learned long before she had ever held a mop. Reeves walked to the head of the table, holding the document up like it was a trophy. His voice boomed with confidence. "All right, everyone listen up. Huang Tech Innovations has sent us an acquisition proposal. If anyone in this room can translate it properly, by tomorrow morning, they'll get my daily salary." He smirked, clearly enjoying the weight of his own words. "That's $27,400 for 1 day's work." Gasps and chuckles rippled around the room. The executives, in their expensive suits and polished shoes, glanced at one another. It was a lot of money, but there was a problem. The document was entirely in Mandarin. Lucia kept her head down, pretending to be absorbed in a stubborn fingerprint on the table's surface. She didn't dare make eye contact. Reeves leaned back, surveying the room like a king waiting for his knights to step forward. "Any takers?" he asked. Derek Willis, the VP of Operations, laughed and shook his head. "Maybe we should just use Google Translate," he said. His Harvard class ring clinked against his water glass as he took a sip. "Probably more reliable than whatever discount service we get otherwise." More laughter, the kind that's sharp and mean. Lucia's fingers tightened around her cloth. She could feel her phone in her pocket, buzzing with a reminder. She didn't need to look to know what it was about. She had 72 hours until the court hearing for their eviction, 3 days before she and her mother would be out on the street. The overdue rent, the legal fees, it all added up to just over $27,000. The exact amount Reeves had just offered. Her chest tightened. She could do it. She could translate every word of that proposal perfectly. She had been fluent in Mandarin since she was 8. But revealing that now, in this room? No, it was too dangerous. Reeves must have noticed her in the corner, because his gaze slid her away. "Maybe even the cleaning lady can try," he said with a smirk. "Though I doubt they teach Mandarin in housekeeping school." The room erupted in laughter again. Lucia kept her head down, letting the comment pass over her like water off glass. She had learned how to survive insults. But her ears caught every word the executives were saying. She always listened. And from the snippets she overheard, she could tell they were already mistranslating pieces of the proposal, twisting meanings, guessing wildly. She moved to the side of the room, polishing the glass trophy case. From there, she could see the top page of the document clearly. A stamp from Shanghai, the red and black logo of Huang Tech Innovations, one of China's largest semiconductor manufacturers, and characters she knew by heart. Her father had taught her some of these exact technical terms, back when she was still a teenager. Her father, Rafael Vega, had worked for Reeves Enterprises for 15 years, building their Asian market partnerships from scratch, until one day a strategic restructuring ended his career overnight. No warning, no gratitude, just a box of things and a cold handshake. When the cough started, it was already too late. By the time they found out it was stage 4 lung cancer, the health insurance had been cut off. Medical bills piled higher than the stack of rejection letters from job applications. Lucia remembered hearing her father tell her mother in a low, defeated voice, "They've blackballed me. Min Reeves made sure I wouldn't work in this industry again." 6 months later, Raphael was gone. He left behind a mountain of debt, a grieving family, and one treasured possession for Lucia, a jade translator's pen, smooth and cool in her palm, carved with the words, "Knowledge illuminates." It was the same pen she now carried everywhere, tucked deep in her pocket. It was more than just a pen. It was a reminder of who she was before life forced her into invisibility. By the time she was 17, she had dropped out of school to work full-time, cleaning offices by night and doing online translation jobs by day under the name Linguistic Bridge. The translation work paid better than cleaning, $22 an hour, but it was unreliable. And if she revealed her real identity, she risked losing her job and the health insurance that kept her mother's medication coming. Now she was 23, running on 3 hours of sleep a night, juggling 2 jobs, caring for her partially paralyzed mother, and counting every cent just to stay afloat. Every month, rent, medication, debt payments, groceries, utilities, they swallowed her paycheck whole. And now, standing just feet away from a document that could save them, she felt her throat tighten. If she stepped forward, she could translate it. She could have that money in her hand. But it wasn't just a question of skill. It was a question of survival. Would Reeves even pay her if she succeeded? Or would he find a way to humiliate her, just like he had with her father? The executives were still arguing about how to handle the situation. Priya Sharma, one of the junior analysts, suggested a translation service, but Reeves shook his head sharply. For something this confidential? Absolutely not. Do you want our advantage leaked to Silicon Valley? Lucia looked at the clock. Every tick felt like it was echoing in her chest. 72 hours until eviction. 72 hours until the proposal deadline. The 2 clocks were ticking in perfect, dangerous harmony. As she finished wiping the last corner of the trophy case, she heard Reeves's voice again. Translate this 30-page proposal accurately in 48 hours, and the money is yours. The executives shifted uncomfortably. None of them could do it. Not well. Lucille walked out of the conference room, her face calm, her steps even. But inside, a storm was building. That night, as her mother slept in the small living room of their apartment, medical monitors blinking softly in the shadows, Lucia sat in the kitchenette, the eviction notice lying next to her jade pen. Her hand shook as she held it. The carved characters warmed from her touch. Her father's voice seemed to echo in her mind. Words build bridges between worlds. She didn't know yet if that bridge would lead her to safety or ruin. But she knew one thing. She could no longer stay invisible. She had a decision to make. And she had to make it soon that Lucia's mind was still spinning when she clocked in for her Saturday evening cleaning shift at Reeves Enterprises. The sun had already dipped below the skyline, painting the glass towers gold and pink. Most of the executive floor was empty, but the memory of the Mandarin document still burned in her thoughts like a stubborn ember. 72 hours until eviction. 48 hours until Reeves's deadline. 2 countdowns, racing each other to destroy her life. She could almost hear her father's voice urging her to act. The jade pen in her pocket seemed heavier than usual, as if it knew she was hesitating. That's when the idea hit her. She didn't have to walk into the conference room and announce her fluency. Not yet. That would be too risky. Reeves and his executives didn't see her as anything more than the cleaning lady. And in their world, being underestimated could be a weapon if she used it carefully. So she decided to test the waters. Lucia wheeled her cleaning cart toward the executive conference room. The door was unlocked. The room dim except for the glow from the city outside. Papers were scattered across the table. A whiteboard on the far wall was covered with messy handwriting. English phrases half-matched to guess Mandarin translations. She stepped closer and scanned the sentences. It was worse than she thought. They were butchering the technical terms, turning precise manufacturing instructions into nonsense. One section they labeled partnership opportunities was actually about an exclusive manufacturing contract. Another section had been guessed as staff reallocation, which was clearly describing thermal management specifications for semiconductor chips. Lucia winced. If Reeves signed as based on their mistranslation, the company could lose millions, or worse, end up in legal trouble. She glanced over her shoulder. The floor was empty. Reaching into her pocket, She pulled out the jade pen. She could still smell the faint sandalwood scent, a piece of her father's study clinging to it. Then she went to work. In neat, clear handwriting, she corrected 3 critical sections of the translation. She didn't touch the rest, just enough to make it obvious that whoever had done it knew exactly what they were talking about. At the bottom, she signed 2 simple words. Night Owl. It was her online translation nickname, the one she used for freelance jobs. Her pulse quickened. She was crossing a line. If anyone found out she had touched these documents, there would be trouble. But if it worked, maybe Reeves would see her value, without knowing who she was. She set the pen down for a moment, feeling the cool jade in her palm, and whispered under her breath, "Let's see if you're still lucky, Papa." By Sunday morning, her little experiment had already caused a stir. She arrived early for her shift and made her way toward the conference room, pushing her cart slowly so she could listen without drawing attention. Inside, Victor Reeves was holding the whiteboard marker, pointing at the corrected sections. "Who the hell is Night Owl?" he demanded. Derek Willis shrugged, his expression carefully neutral. "Security says no one unauthorized came in last night. Must be someone on our team." Lucia behind the half-open door, her heart racing. She could hear papers rustling, chairs shifting. Then Willis's voice changed. "Actually, I did this part," he said smoothly. "I've been studying Mandarin privately. Didn't want to make a big deal of it until I was more fluent. But given the emergency..." Lucia's jaw clenched. Reeves's voice softened with approval. "Finally, some initiative. Take point on this, Willis. Coordinate the team." Lucia's small victory turned to ash. The man had stolen her work in less than a heartbeat, and Reeves had rewarded him for it. She moved her cart away from the door before anyone could see her. All day, the anger simmered under her skin. Every trash bin she emptied, every surface she polished, she imagined tossing Willis's smug expression into the garbage along with the crumpled paper cups. But anger alone wouldn't save her from eviction. That night, when her mother was asleep, Lucia spread a stack of printed papers across their small kitchen table. She had secretly photographed the Mandarin document with her phone earlier in the week. Her plan now was simple. Finish the translation herself quietly and leave more Night Owl notes until Reeves couldn't ignore her. She began with the technical sections, the ones that were too complicated for the executives to guess. But as she worked through the paragraphs, her stomach turned. Hidden among the dense business terms and manufacturing specifications was a clause labeled Workforce Optimization Requirements. The language was slippery, deliberately vague, but she knew exactly what it meant. Reeves would have to lay off at least 300 workers to meet the deal's cost-cutting conditions. Her hand froze over the page. Among those jobs were positions at the manufacturing plant where her mother's cousin worked. That family had only recently found stability after immigrating. If this deal went through as written, their lives could be destroyed. She leaned back in her chair, pressing her hands to her face. Was she really about to help Reeves close a deal that would hurt people in her own community? The thought gnawed at her, but so did the eviction notice still taped to their front door. By Monday morning, things had gotten more complicated. Her phone buzzed with a message from her supervisor at the cleaning company. New security cameras installed in executive wing. All cleaning staff must finish before 7 p.m. until further notice. Her after-hours access was gone. That meant no more late-night visits to the whiteboard, no more quiet corrections when no one was around. If she wanted to keep leaving her Night Owl notes, she'd have to do it during her shift, while executives were still in the building. It was a dangerous move, but she was running out of time. So, during lunch breaks, she hid in a bathroom stall, scribbling translations on scraps of paper. She worked through her own meager lunch in the supply closet, piecing together the rest of the proposal from memory. By Monday evening, she had completed about 40% of the translation. She slipped a few more notes into the conference room. And again, she watched in the shadows as Willis took credit for her work. He was bolder now, talking about his progress in front of Reeves, even suggesting technical improvements he barely understood. Reeves seemed pleased, which only fueled Lucia's frustration. The clock was ticking. 56 hours until eviction. 47 hours until the deadline for Huang Tech's proposal. Lucia's eyes burned from lack of sleep, and her fingers cramped from writing. Her mother's health was getting worse. Stress was making her blood pressure spike dangerously high. That night, her mother squeezed her hand weakly and whispered in Spanish, "We need a miracle." Lucia nodded silently. She knew the miracle was already in her grasp. She just had to find the courage to take it. But in the back of her mind, she also knew if she moved too soon, the wrong person would destroy everything. Tuesday morning started with 4 words that sliced through the air like a blade. "We have a security breach." Lucia was in the executive conference room, quietly arranging the coffee service. She froze in place, careful to keep her head down. On the big screen, the head of security played footage from the new cameras Reeves had installed. The grainy video showed a shadowy figure inside the conference room after hours. The angle was poor, the lighting dim. The face wasn't visible. "It could be industrial espionage," the security chief explained. "We'll need to investigate everyone with after-hours access." Reeves's voice was cold and sharp. "Start with maintenance staff." Lucia's stomach sank. She could feel Derek Willis's gaze settle on her from across the room. A slow, calculating stare. He didn't say anything, not yet, but his eyes told her he was already building a story in his head. By that afternoon, the investigation had begun. One by one, the cleaning staff were called in for questioning. When it was Lucia's turn, she stepped into the small security office and sat down across from the chief. His questions came one after another. "Where were you on Saturday night? Did you enter the conference room? Did you touch any documents?" She knew the safest way to survive this was to play the part they expected, so she put on the mask she'd worn for years. "No understand problem," she said softly, adding a faint accent to her English. "I clean only. No touch papers." The chief sighed, clearly impatient. "All right, go back to work." But as she stepped into the hallway, she nearly collided with Willis. He leaned against the wall, Harvard class ring tapping lightly against the frame of the door. "Interesting," he said, lowering his voice. "You seem to understand English perfectly when I give cleaning instructions." Lucia kept her eyes low. Instructions simple. Questions complicated. He smiled, not kindly, but like a hunter who just spotted his prey. "I think you understand more than you let on, Miss Vega. Much more." She tried to walk past, but he moved into her path. "Looking for this?" he asked, holding something up between 2 fingers. Her breath caught. It was a jade translator's pen. Lucia reached for it instinctively, but Willis pulled it back. "Quite an unusual item for a cleaning lady," he said. "These characters here. Knowledge illuminates, right? Very poetic. Security is very concerned about unauthorized items that could be used for corporate espionage. I've taken the liberty of filing a report." Her pulse pounded in her ears. That pen wasn't just a tool. It was her last tangible connection to her father. By Wednesday morning, she had a formal warning in her HR file for possession of suspicious materials. And her pen was still in Willis's pocket. Without it, her confidence faltered. The eviction countdown now showed 34 hours remaining. As if things couldn't get worse, her phone buzzed at noon with a call from the hospital. Her mother had been rushed to the emergency room with chest pains. The stress was wearing her down. Lucia took the bus to the hospital, sat with her mother while machines beeped softly in the background, and listened as the doctor explained that she'd need to be kept for observation. The deposit for continued care was more money than they had in the bank. When Lucia returned to work that evening, she walked past Willis's office and saw his computer screen glowing with the Huang Tech proposal. On impulse, she slipped inside while he was away. What she found made her blood run cold. Willis had deliberately mistranslated entire sections, changing phrases, twisting technical meanings, burying dangerous clauses so Reeves wouldn't see them. If the company signed this, not only would workers lose their jobs, but they could face massive legal penalties for violating international labor agreements. She took photos of the screen, quickly backing out before he returned. But she didn't make it far. Willis was waiting in the hallway. "I know it's you," he said without preamble. "The mysterious night owl." "I checked the personnel files." Your mother, Min Vega, formerly Min Lu from Shanghai. Your father worked here until we right-size him. Lucia's mask slipped. Her voice came out sharper than she intended. My father was an invaluable asset to this company. Willis raised an eyebrow at her perfect English. So she speaks. I wondered how long you keep up the act. Give me back my pen, she demanded. After I speak with immigration about your mother's visa status, he countered, his tone casual but his words like a knife. Expired, isn't it? Since your father's death. Would be a shame if the authorities were notified. Lucia's stomach dropped. This wasn't just about her job anymore. This was about her family's safety. Willis stepped closer, his voice lowering to a whisper. Stay out of this. Don't say a word to Reeves, and maybe your mother gets to stay in this country. For the rest of the day, she worked in silence, the weight of his threat pressing down on her shoulders. 30 hours until eviction. 24 hours until Huang Tech's deadline. And now, if she spoke up, she risked triggering deportation threats against her mother. The next morning, Thursday, the emergency board meeting began at 9 sharp. Lucia was there, moving quietly along the room's edges, refilling coffee cups and arranging pastries. Willis stood at the front, presenting a completed translation to Reeves and the board. As you can see, he said, gesturing to the large screen, the terms are highly favorable. Huang Tech is offering exclusive manufacturing at rates 15% below market, with minimal quality control oversight. Lucia's hand stilled over the coffee pot. That was a lie. The proposal actually required stricter quality control protocols than the industry average. Willis moved to the next slide. Their only unusual request is accelerated production scheduling using what translates roughly as modified staff allocations. Lucia's heart hammered in her chest. He had just reduced a clause about laying off 300 workers into harmless-sounding nonsense. Then came the final straw. There's a technical section about the Luong Moxing process, Willis continued, mangling the pronunciation so badly it made her flinch. Still a bit unclear, but we'll sort that out during negotiations. That flinch didn't go unnoticed. Reeves's eyes narrowed. Something wrong with the coffee girl? The room went silent. Every head turned toward her. Lucia's mind raced. She could deny it and fade back in the background, or she could speak. Her father's words echoed again. Words build bridges between worlds. She straightened her shoulders. Liudong Moxing, she corrected softly, the tones flowing effortlessly. It means fluid modeling system, not whatever he said. And it's not about staff reallocation. It's about thermal management in semiconductor manufacturing. The air in the room shifted. Willis's face darkened. Excuse me. You've mistranslated several critical sections, she continued, voice steadier now. And you've omitted clauses that will require mass layoffs, violating multiple labor agreements. The board members leaned forward, murmuring. Reeves studied her as if seeing her for the first time. The silence in the boardroom was thick enough to choke on. Every eye was locked on Lucia. Reeves leaned forward slowly, studying her like a puzzle piece that suddenly didn't fit the picture he thought he knew. You speak Mandarin? Lucia took a breath, keeping her voice calm but firm. Mandarin, Spanish, and English. I also read Japanese and Korean, though my speaking isn't as strong in those. Willis let out a harsh laugh. She's lying. She's just a cleaner. My father, Lucia said, cutting him off, was Rafael Vega. He built your Asian market division before your so-called strategic restructuring pushed him out. He taught me business Mandarin and technical terms since I was a child. For the first time, recognition flickered across Reeves's face. Vega, I remember him. She's probably working for a competitor, Willis snapped. Lucia ignored him and pulled out her phone. Check my profile. Translationbridge.com. Username Linguistic Bridge. Over 400 completed translations, academic and technical, rated 4.98 out of 5. She scrolled through the glowing testimonials from clients in engineering and business. Reeves took the phone, scanned the page, and his brow furrowed. Page 16, paragraph 4, she continued, her voice gaining strength. It clearly states that Reeves Enterprises must implement workforce reduction measures of no less than 300 positions within 60 days of contract execution. I can recite it in Mandarin if you'd like. Murmurs rippled through the board. Some glanced at Willis, others at Reeves. Willis's face had gone a dangerous shade of red. This is outrageous. I've already translated about 60% of the document, Lucia went on. The anonymous notes, the ones you've been praising Willis for, those were mine. I signed them Night Owl. The murmuring grew louder. Reeves turned his gaze on Willis. You've been taking credit for someone else's work? Willis straightened, but his voice wavered. This is ridiculous. She has no proof. Lucia reached out a hand, palm up. My pen. Give it back. Willis stiffened. My Jade translator's pen. She said clearly that you confiscated and filed as suspicious material. Return it. Reeves's eyes narrowed at Willis. After a long pause, Willis slowly pulled a pen from his jacket and placed it in her hand. Lucia closed her fingers around it, feeling the familiar cool weight. I'll translate the remaining 40% by tomorrow's 9 a.m. deadline, she said, but I want the original offer in writing. Your daily salary is payment $27,400, and a contract guaranteeing my continued employment regardless of the outcome, with a confidentiality clause protecting my mother's immigration status. The room went silent. It was the boldest thing she'd ever said in her life. Reeves leaned back, a spark of interest lighting his eyes. He was a man who respected risk when it was calculated. Draw up the agreement, he told his assistant. Lucia's heartbeat steadied. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving, she was negotiating. By the time the board meeting ended, she had a signed agreement in hand. The jade pen rested in her pocket once more, no longer stolen property, but a weapon in her arsenal. They gave her a small conference room and a company laptop to work on. The deadline was less than 18 hours away. She started immediately, her father's voice echoing in her head as she moved through the dense technical language. The hours slipped by. Outside the glass walls, the office floor emptied. By midnight, only the faint hum of the vending machine and the buzz of fluorescent lights kept her company. At 3 a.m., she had translated nearly 85% of the document. Her fingers ached, her eyes burned, but her mind was clear. Then her phone buzzed. A text from her neighbor. Doctors want to keep your mom another day. Need $2,200 deposit. She rubbed her temples, calculating in her head. Reeves's payment would cover everything. She just had to finish. She bent over the keyboard again. But before she could type the next sentence, the door opened. Willis walked in, holding 2 paper cups of coffee. You look exhausted, he said with a fake smile. Thought you could use a pick-me-up. She didn't trust him for a second, but she was too focused on finishing to argue. She reached for the cup, and in one smooth motion, Willis tripped. The coffee splashed across her desk, soaking her handwritten notes and seeping into the laptop keyboard. Lucia gasped, snatching her papers, trying to blot the spreading stain. The laptop screen flickered, then went black. My translation, she began, panic rising. Don't worry, Willis interrupted smoothly. I moved your files to my secure drive earlier. Can't be too careful with sensitive material. Her blood went cold. I give them back, he continued, but technical glitch. Corrupted files. These things happen. The smirk on his face told her everything. This was no accident. Reeves expects perfection, Willis said casually as he walked to the door. One mistranslated clause could cost the company millions. I'm sure he'll understand if you need to withdraw. He left without another word, the smell of burnt coffee lingering in the air. Lucia stared at the dead laptop, her ruined notes, her shaking hands. 3 hours of work. Gone. Then her phone rang. The landlord. Eviction processor coming tomorrow morning instead of Monday. Legal approved acceleration due to repeated late payments. Her head spun. She had less than 24 hours to finish the translation and less than 12 to stop her family from being thrown onto the street. For a brief moment, she thought about walking away, just disappearing. Find another cleaning job. Start over. But then she looked at the jade pan. The carved characters caught the light. Her father's words were louder than her fear. Words build bridges between worlds. She grabbed a fresh stack of paper, uncapped the pen, and began reconstructing everything from memory. By sunrise, she had managed to rebuild nearly all of what she'd lost. Her eyes felt like sand, her back ached, and her handwriting had grown shaky. At 8:47 a.m., Reeves appeared in the doorway with Willis at his side. "I expected this," Reeves said, glancing over her disheveled desk. "People should stay in their lanes. Housekeepers clean, executives execute. That's why I'm rich, and you're exactly where you belong. Draft a termination notice," he told his assistant. Clearly, Miss Vega violated company policy by accessing confidential documents without authorization. Lucia's heart pounded. "Our agreement was contingent on delivery. Reeves cut her off, and you failed." He turned to Willis. "Call Translation Pro. See if they can start from scratch this afternoon." Willis's smug smile was the last straw. Lucia's eyes fell on her bag, and the corner of a notebook peeking out. Her father's research journal. She had forgotten she'd brought it. "Wait," she said, her voice cutting through the room. "Wait." The single word stopped Reeves in his tracks. His assistant froze mid-note, and even Willis's smug grin faltered. Lucia reached into her bag and pulled out the worn leather-bound notebook. Its corners were frayed, the pages filled with dense handwriting and precise diagrams. "My father worked on this exact technology," she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline rushing through her veins. "The GX500 semiconductor series. He was part of the original development team before Huang Tech bought the patent." Willis scoffed. "So what? That's ancient history." "These notes," Lucia said, flipping to a page covered in detailed sketches, "contain proprietary details about the thermal modeling system that aren't even explained in the Huang Tech proposal. They left them out because they assumed Reeves Enterprises still understood the foundational technology. But judging by your translation, you don't." Reeves took a step closer, curiosity flickering in his eyes. "Show me." Lucia slid the notebook across the table. "This section here, fluid modeling specifications. If you don't address them correctly in your response, Huang Tech will know you don't have the capability to meet their quality standards. They'll walk away and you'll lose the deal." For the first time since she started speaking, Reeves looked unsettled. His eyes darted between the journal and her face. "You're telling me you can finish this translation accurately using this information?" "Yes," she said, "and not just translate it. I can clarify every technical ambiguity, so there's no room for misunderstanding on either side." Reeves glanced at the wall clock. 8:50 a.m. The Huang Tech video call was in 10 minutes. He hesitated for only a second before making his decision. "You have until 8:58. Finish it." Lucia pulled the jade pen from her pocket, its weight reassuring in her hand, and bent over the pages. She worked quickly but with precision, filling in gaps, correcting mistranslations, and adding critical technical notes. Her father's diagrams guided her through the most complex sections like a map. At 8:57, she set the completed translation on the table in front of Reeves. "Done." The assistant poked their head in. "The Huang Tech team is ready on the call." Reeves took the document, scanning it quickly. Then he glanced at Willis. "Miss Vega will be staying for this meeting." Willis's jaw tightened. "She's not authorized." "Neither are you anymore if you keep talking," Reeves snapped. They walked into the boardroom where a large video screen displayed the faces of Huang Tech's executives. At the center was Lin Huang himself, flanked by his advisors. But it was the man sitting beside him who made Lucia's breath catch, Mr. Jiang, her father's former colleague. Jiang's eyes lit up the moment he saw her. "Miss Vega," he said in Mandarin, "it is an honor to meet Raphael's daughter." He spoke of your linguistic gifts often. Lucia's throat tightened, but she managed a respectful nod. "The honor is mine, Mr. Jiang. I didn't realize you would be part of this meeting." Lin Huang leaned forward. "We didn't either, until our intelligence team noticed someone here was accurately translating our deliberately complex proposal. Few people could navigate those terms correctly." Reeves glanced between them, clearly lost in the Mandarin exchange. Switching to English, Lucia said, Mr. Huang says they included extra technical complexities as a test, to see if Reeves Enterprises still had the expertise my father helped build. Reeves's brow furrowed. And did we pass? That, Lucia said, switching back to Mandarin, depends on how you interpret the workforce optimization clause. Was the ambiguity intentional? A small smile tugged at Huang's lips. Very perceptive. We have concerns about Reeves Enterprises' labor practices since Mr. Vega's departure. That clause was a test of integrity, not just competence. Lucia translated this calmly into English. They're concerned about your company's approach to workforce management. That section was a character test. Willis couldn't contain himself. This is ridiculous. Lucia's voice cut through his protest. Would you like to explain, Mr. Willis, why you deliberately mistranslated key sections and sabotaged my work? Willis froze. Lucia reached into her bag again and pulled out her phone. Security footage from Tuesday night, she said, holding the screen toward Reeves. The video showed Willis pouring coffee over her notes and laptop, then deleting files from her folder. The boardroom went silent. Reeves's jaw tightened. Mr. Willis, he said in a voice like steel, you're fired. Security will escort you out. Willis sputtered something about misunderstandings, but no one listened. 2 security guards appeared and led him from the room. When the door closed, Huang spoke again in Mandarin. We will proceed with the contract on one condition, that Ms. Vega oversees implementation as our cultural liaison. Lucia's pulse raced. She translated the statement for Reeves, her tone even. They insist on working directly with me as a condition of the deal. The power shift in the room was immediate and undeniable. With millions of dollars on the line, and only minutes before the deadline, Reeves had no choice. Fine, he said through gritted teeth. Ms. Vega will oversee the cultural aspects of the implementation. The call continued for another 20 minutes, ending with handshakes and formal thanks on both sides. When the screen went dark, Reeves turned to her. It seems I underestimated you. Lucia met his gaze without flinching. Many people do. Our agreement stands, he said. He pulled out his checkbook and signed a slip of paper, sliding across the table. $27,400. Though it appears you've earned considerably more than that. Minutes later, an email from Huang Tech arrived, confirming a $50,000 signing bonus specifically designated for cultural consultancy services provided by Ms. Lucia Vega. $77,400. Enough to stop the eviction, pay her mother's medical bills, and buy time to build something new. She held the jade pen in her hand, feeling the smooth surface against her skin. It no longer felt like a relic of a past life. It felt like a key to her future. Lucia walked out of the boardroom with the signed check in one hand and her jade pen in the other. For a moment, she just stood there in the quiet hallway, staring at the numbers printed on the check. $27,400. And with Huang Tech's bonus, a total of $77,400. She had spent years counting pennies, stretching every dollar, sacrificing sleep and comfort just to keep a roof over her mother's head. Now, in a single morning, everything had changed, but there was no time to stand still. The eviction notice was still taped to her apartment door. Her mother was still in the hospital, and the bill for the extended stay was growing by the hour. Lucia tucked the check safely into her bag and headed straight for the bank. The teller's eyes widened at the deposit slip, but Lucia only gave a polite nod. She had no desire to explain where it came from. From there, she went directly to her landlord's office. The man barely looked up from his computer when she walked in, clearly expecting the same excuses he'd heard before. "I'm here to pay the full balance," she said simply. His head snapped up. "The full?" She slid a cashier's check across the desk. "Back rent, legal fees, and I'd like the eviction notice removed immediately." He blinked, took the check, and typed something quickly into his system. "Well, that's taken care of. Then, you're clear." Clear. The word felt like fresh air after years of suffocation. Next was a hospital. Lucia handed over the deposit for her mother's continued care. The relief on the nurse's face was mirrored by the relief in Lucia's own chest. When she entered her mother's room, Min was propped up against the pillows, the beeping monitors steady now. "Lucia?" her mother said softly, her accent still carrying traces of Shanghai. "You look different." Lucia smiled, sitting down beside her. "Things are going to be better now, Mama. I promise." Min's eyes flicked to the jade pen in her daughter's hand. She reached out and brushed her fingers over it. "Your father will be proud." Lucia swallowed the lump in her throat. "I think he was with me in that room today." That night, for the first time in years, Lucia slept without the heavy knot of worry in her chest. The next few days moved quickly. The Huang Tech deal was announced publicly, sending Reeves Enterprises' stock price soaring. News articles praised the unexpected talent discovery that had saved the contract at the last minute. The company released an official statement crediting Ms. Lucia Vega as the lead cultural liaison for the partnership. Lucia didn't care much of corporate spin, but she cared about the opportunities it opened. Reeves kept his promise. She retained her job, but now with a new title, Cultural and Technical Liaison. It was still strange to see her name printed on an office door, even if the office was small. On her first official day in the new role, she wore a simple navy blouse and slacks, not flashy, but enough to show she belonged. When she walked the executive floor, people who had once ignored her now greeted her by name. Some of the cleaning staff stared openly, surprised to see her in a different uniform. Lucia made a point to stop and talk with them, asking about their families, their dreams. She knew too well how easy it was for talent to stay hidden when no one bothered to look. In the background, whispers about Derek Willis's firing spread to the company like wildfire. The leaked security footage had circulated internally, turning him into a cautionary tale about greed and sabotage. Reeves didn't become a saint overnight. He was still calculating and profit-driven, but even he seemed to recognize the value of keeping Lucia in the room. 2 weeks later, she got the call she'd been waiting for. "Your mother's being discharged," the nurse said. "Her recovery is ahead of schedule." Lucia picked her up from the hospital and brought her to the apartment, still small, but now safe from eviction. She'd already started looking for a larger place with better accessibility for her mother's needs. One evening, as they sat at the kitchen table, Min reached for the jade pen again. "You've carried this through every storm," her mother said. "It's time you use it to build something new." Lucia nodded. She'd been thinking the same thing. The first change came quietly. She began working with HR to draft a proposal for a new internal program, Hidden Talents Initiative. The idea was simple: give employees in every department a chance to showcase skills outside their current job description. Language abilities, technical knowledge, creative talents. Anything that could add value to the company. When she presented it to Reeves, he raised an eyebrow. "This isn't a charity, Ms. Vega." "It's not charity," she replied. "It's profit. You keep saying competitive advantage comes from innovation. Innovation comes from talent. And talent doesn't always wear a suit." He studied her for a long moment before nodding slowly. "Fine. Run your program, but make it worth my time." Within weeks, the initiative began uncovering surprising results. A security guard with an engineering degree from Nigeria who was soon helping with product testing. A cafeteria worker who spoke 5 languages, now assisting in customer service for international clients. An IT help desk technician with a gift for design, contributing to the next product line. Lucia saw herself in all of them. Her own workload grew as the Huang Tech partnership moved forward. The cultural differences, the technical precision, she was the bridge holding it together. Every time she translated a term or explained a nuance that prevented a misunderstanding, she thought of her father's words. Words build bridges between worlds. Now, those bridges weren't just saving deals, they were changing lives. By the end of the first quarter, Reeves Enterprises reported a 32% increase in market share in Asia. At the board meeting, Reeves himself said, "Ms. Vega's contributions have exceeded expectations." Lucia knew it was corporate speak, for I was wrong about her. And for once, she didn't mind. Her salary was more than enough to cover her expenses. The medical debt was shrinking month by month, and she had begun setting aside money for something she'd almost forgotten was possible, A future point 6 months later, Lucia Vega stood in her new office on the 28th floor of Reeves Enterprises. Floor-to-ceiling windows open onto a view of the city she had once cleaned in silence. The sunlight poured in, reflecting off the polished walnut desk, hers, not borrowed, not temporary. On that desk sat 2 framed photos. One was of her mother, smiling, healthier than she'd been in years. The other was of her father, taken in his study, stacks of books behind him. Between them, resting in a crystal stand, was the jade translator's pen. When she held it now, the cool surface still carried a faint scent of sandalwood, but it no longer felt like a relic of loss. It felt like a badge of authority, a reminder that she had built something her father would have been proud to see. Her title read, Director of International Relations. It still felt strange sometimes, hearing people address her as Ms. Vega with respect. But what surprised her more was how much the culture of the company had shifted since that day in the boardroom. The Hidden Talents initiative she had proposed wasn't just a side project anymore. It was an official program with a dedicated budget, and the results were undeniable. The security guard with the engineering degree now worked in product development. The cafeteria worker who spoke 5 languages had become the go-to liaison for overseas clients. Even Reeves had admitted, in his own way, that talent doesn't always come in predictable packaging. Lucia smiled at that memory. Coming from him, it was practically a confession. The Huang Tech partnership had flourished under her guidance. Cultural misunderstandings that could have cost millions never made it past the first meeting, because she caught them before they grew into problems. Technical details were addressed with precision, bridging the gap between cultures and markets. Quarterly reports showed a 32% increase in Asian market share and a 24% improvement in employee retention. Investors were happy. The board was happy. And Reeves, though still driven by profit above all, had learned to keep Lucia in the room for every major decision involving international business. One crisp October morning, her assistant stepped in with a bouquet of fresh orchids. "These just came in for you," she said. Lucia read the card. From Mr. Huang and the team at Huang Tech, congratulations on 6 months of partnership. She set the flowers beside her father's photo. Orchids and sandalwood. The scents mingled, connecting the past and present in a way that felt almost like a blessing. That afternoon was the monthly board meeting. The same boardroom where she had once been a silent shadow with a coffee pot was now a place where her voice carried weight. She opened the meeting with a slide showing the market share increase alongside graphs of employee engagement. "Talent doesn't always arrive in expected packages," she said, scanning the room. "But companies that recognize it, regardless of how it's wrapped, gain a competitive advantage." The board members nodded, some scribbling notes. She went on to outline her plan for expanding into new markets in Southeast Asia, using lessons learned from a Huang Tech deal. It wasn't just about language. It was about understanding the nuances of culture, business etiquette, and trust. Numbers spoke every language, and the ones on her slides were speaking loudly in her favor. After the meeting, Reeves caught up with her in the hallway. "You've done well," he said. Lucia turned to face him. "I told you on day one, I was more than what you saw." He gave a half smile, the closest thing to an admission she was going to get. "Lightning in a bottle," he said. "Hard to find." She didn't correct him, though part of her wanted to. She knew it wasn't lightning. It was years of work, resilience, and a refusal to stay invisible. Outside the office, life had changed just as much. Her mother was thriving in a specialized care facility only 15 minutes from their new 2-bedroom apartment. Men had even started taking online courses to refresh her engineering skills. Lucia had paid off her father's medical debt in full. The weight of those numbers, once crushing, was gone, and for the first time since she could remember, she had savings, not just for emergencies, but for the future. One evening, she walked past a glass-walled meeting room on the lower floor. Inside, a young woman in a cleaning uniform was restocking a coffee station, her eyes drifting to the presentation slides on the wall. Lucia paused. She recognized that look, quiet interest mixed with the instinct to stay unnoticed. She stepped inside. "What's your name?" The young woman startled. Elena," What languages do you speak, Elena? Elena hesitated, then said softly, English, Spanish, and some Portuguese. Lucia smiled. That's 3 more than some of the people upstairs. Come see me next week. I think we can put those skills to use. As she walked away, Lucia felt something warm settle in her chest. This was how it started, one person at a time. 6 months ago, she'd been invisible. Now, she was opening doors for others. But she knew her journey wasn't over yet. There were still barriers to break. Still rooms where voices like hers weren't heard enough. And she planned to change that. It was a warm spring evening when Lucia stepped onto the stage at the city's annual International Business Awards. The lights above were bright, but not blinding. She could see the crowd, hundreds of faces, from polished executives to community leaders, all turned toward her. A year ago, she wouldn't have been anywhere near this room unless she was clearing empty glasses from the tables. Now, she was here to receive the Cultural Bridge Award, honoring individuals who had significantly advanced cross-cultural business partnerships. The host handed her the glass award. The applause was loud, but what she heard most clearly was a soft echo of her father's voice in her mind. Words build bridges between worlds. She stepped to the microphone. A year ago, she began, I was standing in a very different room, wearing a cleaning uniform, polishing a conference table while executives discussed a deal that could change their company's future. I had the skills to be part of that conversation, but no one saw me. I was invisible. She paused, letting the words sink in. But invisibility, she continued, doesn't mean you have no value. It just means the world hasn't learned to look for you yet. A murmur of agreement moved through the audience. I want to thank the people who underestimated me, she said with a small smile, because you taught me that when opportunity finally comes, you don't wait to be invited to the table. You pull out a chair and take your seat. She looked toward the front row, where her mother sat, eyes bright with pride. This award isn't just for me, Lucia said. It's for my father, Rafael Vega, who taught me that language is more than words. It's connection, understanding, and respect. It's for my mother, Min, who showed me resilience. And it's for every person whose skills are overlooked because of the job title on their badge, the accent in their voice, or the assumptions others make when they see them. Applause rose again, this time warmer, fuller. I'll end with this, she said. Talent doesn't always come in the package you expect. Sometimes, the best translator in the building is the one sweeping the floors. Sometimes, the most brilliant strategist is the one serving coffee. If you want to find real innovation, start looking where you've never looked before. She stepped back from a microphone, and the standing ovation was immediate. Back at home later that night, Lucia placed the award on the shelf beside her father's photo and the jade pen. Her mother was making tea in the kitchen, humming softly. Lucia turned the pen in her hands. The carved characters, knowledge illuminates, seemed to glow faintly in the lamplight. When she had first carried it, it had been a secret, a reminder of what she had lost. Now, it was an open symbol of what she had gained, and of the bridges she had built for others. Her phone buzzed. A message from Elena, the young cleaner she'd spoken to months earlier. Got the job in customer service. Starting Monday. Thank you for believing in me. Lucia smiled, setting the phone down. The chain was already growing, one voice lifting another. The next morning, she walked into Reeves Enterprises and took the elevator to the top floor. When the doors opened, she heard greetings in 3 different languages from 3 different employees. She answered each one in kind, the words flowing naturally. She still remembered the first time she'd walked these halls, how she kept her head down, afraid to be noticed. Now, she walked with her head high, not just seen but respected. Her father had been right. Words did build bridges. But she'd learned something else, too. Courage is what makes you cross them. She stopped at the door to the boardroom. This was the same place where Reeves had once joked about the cleaning lady translating a Mandarin proposal. The same place where she'd stood, trembling but defiant, correcting him in front of everyone. Now, she opened the door, and the board members rose from their seats to greet her. Not because she was a director of international relations, not because of her title or salary, but because she had proven beyond doubt that she belonged here. She took her seat at the head of the table, jade pen in hand, and smiled. "Good morning," she said in Mandarin, Spanish, and English. "Let's get started." To the viewer, have you ever been underestimated? Ever had someone look right past your skills because of your job, your background, or how you look? Did you ever get the chance to prove them wrong? Share your story in the comments. I want to know when you went from invisible to invaluable. If this story of hidden talent and unexpected triumph inspired you, don't keep it to yourself. Hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the notification bell so you never miss more powerful, true-to-life stories like this one. Remember, your next chapter could be one brave decision away, just like Lucia's was.